हाय गाइस वेलकम टू डीप टॉक। डीप टॉक में आपका आज एक बार फिर से स्वागत है। टुडे आई हैव इन डीप टॉक someone who's the world's number one transformation fitness trainer. I would say he's not just a fitness trainer, he's one of the biggest fitness entrepreneurs. And I'll give you two words which will make you immediately connect to him. He's also the trainer for Hrithik Roshan. Please welcome Kris Gethin.
Thank you very much for having me, buddy.
Thank you. And since Chris is comfortable in Hindi, we are going to do this entirely in Hindi.
Well, you'll see me getting comfortable, very uncomfortable.
But my Hindi is not so good, so we'll have to do it in English if it's okay with you, Chris.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Tika, yeah, Archer.
You know a little bit Hindi?
Much, but a little, a little. You know, I pick up things every now and again. If someone's talking about me, I let on that I know what they're talking about.
Chris is also the reason why the Hrithik Roshan movie is called Krish.
Of course, yeah, named after myself. They just misspelt it.
Yeah. No, that we do for numerology and for superstition, like the priest or somebody will say that some astrologer will say you must put an extra edge. But is that how it happened? Did you name yourself Chris or they named the movie after?
Just meant to be. But ever since then, my name is now spelt as Krish instead of Chris. Whenever a lot of people address me here, and if it's in written format, that's how they do it.
Wow. And one of my most popular books and movies is Two States, in which the hero is called Krish.
Oh, interesting.
So Krish comes from Krishna.
Yeah.
But your Chris comes from?
Christian.
Oh, so that's your full name.
Yeah.
So
only my mum says that though if I've done something bad.
Okay. And I must say, Chris, I am most nervous today. I don't get nervous in my own podcast, but I am nervous today because I've never had someone who is so fit on my podcast. And although I try to work out, I I can feel like compared to you, I'll be looking like I don't know.
I think that's what happens to a lot of people that have insecurities when they're growing up. We try to build ourselves up with this larger vessel so then we can hide a little bit of our insecurity. But in doing so, sometimes we impend insecurities in other people. Well, and that's not really the intention because we're always comparing each other, aren't we? Are we living up to our expectations? Whether we look at someone's car, the way their physique, how much they're earning. And now with social platforms, it's a constant battle of insecurity. It's not the intention, but I can.
That's interesting. As a fitness trainer, you look at the psychology as well. Is that a big part of fitness?
It's all of it. You are as much, I'd say, a psychologist or a life coach, a confidant than you are a trainer because you have to get into the head because everybody knows how to apply. A lot of that, we all know we need to move more, we need to eat a certain way, but it's very difficult to do so because we get in our own way. So we have to heighten our senses to what we really want, what we want to feel. Instead, we're just getting this dopamine overflow by constant noise, engagement, phones. So we lose sight of what is important and our perception of how to do these things. If we're to compare ourselves to some people that don't have the opportunity to exercise or to choose what to eat, then all of a sudden it's easy. But we don't allow that to get into our head. We allow ourselves to get into our heads and get in the way.
Tell us about your journey. Where were you born? Where were you? What kind of family were you born in? A very rich family? Were you, what were you like as a child? What was school like? Tell me that age from 0 to 10. What was Chris like?
Okay, well, I grew up on a farm as an only child up until the age of 9.
Where?
In Wales, mid Wales. So grew up on a farm. All my family are farmers.
What did they grow?
Well, we had like sheep, we had cattle. We never grew anything. We grew in a garden, whether
Animal farm.
animal farming. Yeah, animal farming. So at a very young age, I learned hard work ethic, waking up at an early time, which has pretty much scarred me to this day because I still wake up at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And I loved it.
What work did you do as a child?
So I'd help dad on the farm a little earlier, before starting school, whether that be like, feeding a chicken, feeding a sheep, depending what time of year, if it was lambing. We didn't have much money at all. So father was always working on cars to fix them up. either to so we had a car that was drivable or to sell a car. And he would do the same with like building trailers, building garden furniture. And so I'd always have to help in some way, shape, or form.
Like you'd be the guy, his assistant,
Yeah.
carrying the box of tools or whatever.
Yeah, holding the bit of sheet metal while he's welding it, and I have to turn away so I don't get blinded. And loads of things like that.
You were at the age of young age, you were just like
We were.
like helping donkeys find company, literally. Did I bet at that point you never thought you were gonna be like famous or world famous or known or working with movie stars?
Yeah, I wouldn't say famous because I've seen fame, with some of the people that I work with, but
Not
recognized.
yeah, whatever. I mean, our Hrithik Roshan famous, and
Yeah.
there is Kris Gethin famous, and I mean, you are famous, Chris.
I'd say recognized.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. But I had no idea back then. I hated school. Didn't like school. I wasn't able to concentrate in school because I was being taught things that I wasn't interested in at that time. It didn't make sense to me. And at that time, so starting from the age of 8 years old, I started racing motocross on a weekend, and that consumed my life for the next 10, 11 years, just racing motocross everywhere.
What is that? How does that work?
So motocross is like off-road motorcycle racing. You're going over jumps. You're basically in a dirt field and you're racing against a lot of other riders. And I loved it. It's very motocross is huge in Wales, and
There was no bodybuilding happening then, or
nothing whatsoever.
what did you look like then?
Very skinny.
Oh,
Because I
really?
was trying to be as light as I possibly could to race on a motocross bike and have that advantage of being a little bit lighter. So I did. I suffered severely from asthma. I had croup as a very young child. I was ambulanced to hospital at the age of like 3 years old, almost died. And asthma since that moment, which ran in the family, eczema or asthma, was very, very bad. So I had a lot of difficulty finishing races at a high speed because of this weakness. So I did a lot of training, a lot of running, a lot of mountain biking, a lot of swimming, just to keep my cardiovascular fitness up. I wasn't doing any resistance training.
Nothing.
No, it's more used in motocross today for weight training. We know the positives of it. We didn't back then. So it was just a lot of cardio and very little muscle, and not knowing anything about nutrition, and just getting in as many calories as I possibly could to fuel my path.
You would eat anything at that time,
I was eating a lot.
like what? Everything.
Yeah, and I was eating a lot that was on the farm, which was good. There's no doubt about it. But if I wanted to eat cereals in the morning, sure, I was eating a lot of sugary cereals.
So what is a good breakfast then?
I always try to have, and I suggest, not just for myself, because people will say, oh, you're a bodybuilder, of course you want protein. But there has to be some form of protein within that breakfast. So that could be a fish, that could be your eggs, it could be an omelet, um, along with some carbohydrates. Maybe that is some sourdough bread, or it could be oats,
So
porridge.
sourdough bread is okay.
Yeah, like a fermented sourdough. Fermented sourdough is usually pretty good. I like to go for a fermented kind, and or like oats or some.
For vegetarians.
Yeah, for a slower release, carbohydrate. And if you're going to have a whole egg, and you're going to have some healthy fats, or you could put some nuts on top as your healthy fats. That's a more balanced diet. I try not to overdo the fats with the carbohydrates, or the carbohydrates with fats, because I want to give the body one fuel source to choose from, as opposed to two and store the other. But it all depends on how active that individual is. So if you're going to have a more of a heavier carb meal, maybe you have your fats with your second or third meal. Try not to combine them too much together.
All right. Anyway, I keep digressing. Let's go back to your childhood. You were eating a lot. You were doing all this cardio. In fact, I have been, I remember once I was at the bank. I was working in a bank, and there was a Scottish guy, and you know how Scots are very blunt. And I was gaining weight, and I said I have to lose weight, and he said the only way to lose weight is run like a madman, and you know that, bitch. And it's kind of true. Nothing makes you lose weight faster than running, right? Like in terms of speed and seeing the difference on the scale, and it also feels like you're doing something. Intuitively it feels like, oh my god, I'm running, I'm burning fuel. And I used to do that, and of course it would come back and this that, and then And at some point I didn't like the way I was looking also. I started looking very old and very, gaunt in some ways. And you were saying you also used to do that only cardio.
Yeah, yeah, and just recently, when I say recently, like 2017, I was doing a lot of cardio then, but like I still do a lot of cardio. I started doing Ironmans. I started doing ultra marathons as well.
How did that happen? You were doing bikes, motorbikes, and then were trying to build strength. How did you get into this whole fitness?
For bodybuilding, yeah. So it's through injuries because I accumulated a lot of injuries through motocross over the years. Yeah.
Banged your bike or?
Falling, crashing all the time. Yeah, motocross is one of the most extreme, dangerous sports in the world you can ever choose. Because if you're jumping 50 foot and you're trying to race other people as fast as you possibly can for 30 minutes,
You will hurt yourself.
of course, it's not a matter of, yeah, it's not a matter of if, it's when. Yeah, I've lost some friends to motocross,
Died.
died, paralyzed. Yeah, it happens. It happens. It happens today. Um, yeah, a lot of those injuries I accumulated over the years.
Why were you
I was
doing
addicted.
something so
I
crazy?
was addicted to adrenaline, and after a while, it becomes your identity, and you don't feel that you feel alive or have a purpose without it. So, once you retire from one, it's like, where else can I get it? So then I started doing downhill mountain bike racing and getting it from there, and that was not as fulfilling as motocross. So then alcohol and drugs.
Really? You went through that phase too?
Yeah.
Talk to me about it. What is really happening? You started doing biking, it gave you a thrill. Adrenaline is that thrill inducing kind of brain chemical, if you can call it, neurotransmitter. And then you're saying you tried to go to some other mountain biking, downhill racing, which sounds again very dangerous to me.
Yeah, there was no like lifts where in the UK so much because there's no skiing. Now that's what I do. I go up like on a chairlift. But back then it was like you'd go back and downhill mountain biking was a new sport then. So we'd all get taken up in the back of a tractor trailer to a top of a hill, and then we'd all race down like a slalom style through the forestry.
Now that you look back, you feel it was like a drug.
Oh, for sure. No doubt about it.
It wasn't so much like this is my, because w- how was it your passion? You know how some people say this is my passion, motocross is my passion. How do you know that it was not a passion but a drug?
I think it was a bit of both because I felt like somebody doing it because in school I was a nobody. I didn't want to be there. I felt stupid. The teachers would tell me I'm stupid. And where I would live for that weekend where I could actually be somebody and be something and be happy. I feel myself. So I was really at home there because I had a passion for this. I really enjoyed it. I'd spend my time during the week working on my motorbike. And I've always been somebody that has been very good in my own company. And I never liked team sports. And I've always done individualized sports. So that was home for me. I felt very secure in that environment.
And then you, with the injuries, you felt this is not worth it.
Yeah, well, I could only get sponsorship doing another sport called enduros, which is just riding all day. And I didn't enjoy that. That wasn't the thrill because I'd spent as much time in the hospital as I did on a racetrack. So that's when I thought, okay, I'm going to hang this up because it was a spinal injury that put an end to my career. But I was
Oh,
like,
you had a proper,
yeah.
what was the injury?
So I got a major curvature of my spine. It's like lordosis, and my spine is left aligned to my hips by about an inch and a half. So if you look at X-rays of my spine now, it's shifted to the right about an inch and a half because 70% of the corners on motocross tracks are left-hand corners, and over the years it just kept pounding, pounding because I didn't have any muscle back then. If I knew what I know now, I would have done some more resistance training to take care of my skeletal system, to keep it better aligned. But there was nothing taut holding my spine as much.
And then mountain biking, and then you said alcohol and drugs.
Yeah.
How and why did that happen? For somebody who's so active, raised animals, farm boy, no bad influences, no No trauma, childhood,
No,
just maybe
none.
a little boring sometimes. And
Bring it. No, it wasn't boring at all. It was an adventure on the farm. I loved
no,
it.
not farm, but like school. You're saying school
Yeah,
was boring,
yeah.
but nothing to. How did the alcohol and drugs happen?
So I think a lot of people up, especially in a place where I came from in the UK, they'd probably started going to pubs maybe at like 16, 17, meeting girls and all that. I didn't do any of that because my life was traveling on weekends, racing. And then, when I got to my early 20s, I'm like, I started when I was racing motocross and definitely downhill mountain biking. Now I'm surrounded by an extreme crowd who will do extreme things for laughs, for fun. And I was part of that crowd. And then alcohol just tend to fit in pretty well. And then, when you felt really good and now you're losing even more inhibitions and doing crazier stuff, it's like, let's do more of this. And then through that, that was like a gateway to drugs. And this
So what
is
alcohol? Beer or everything?
mostly vodka and beer. Yeah, mostly vodka and
How
beer.
much are we talking? How much could you do at that time?
I could probably drink, I don't know, 12 to 15 pints and shots, probably 20 plus.
Wow, that is real abuse of your body.
Sure, for sure. And I think you build a tolerance, and I was just building a tolerance.
Yeah. And now we know this, now scientific studies have shown it's connected because the biking is giving a dopamine release, alcohol is giving a dopamine release. In the brain, it's all the same.
Yeah, for
In the
sure.
same, I mean, but the alcohol is without any productive pursuit. It's not to any good end. It's just a hack to that, like just open the dopamine tap, which is supposed to open when you do the work.
Yeah, and it's just a form of escapism because like I said, I'd lost my identity at this time. I didn't know what my identity was. I didn't.
How old were you? 20s, you said.
Yeah, so I was like about 20 years old at this
And
time.
all your mates, all your friends were also like this.
A lot of them, yeah.
You know why I'm asking this? Because I talk to people as this is a motivation channel. So the company really determines who you become, right?
100%. 100%. And that's what led to me leaving Wales. It's not that Wales was a bad place. I was just a weak person. And I was surrounded by a social community that I was very influenced by. So I knew because I don't know how many times I'd wake up like on a Sunday or a Monday and go, oh my God, I'm never doing that again.
So a voice inside was telling you,
Oh, yeah.
dude, Chris, this is wrong.
It was. Definitely was. I could see, a couple of my friends that aren't here now, what was happening to them or getting locked up and then just doing stupid stuff because you'd hear about the stories that you did the following day and you're like, I did that? And I just thought, this is not because, where I came from is a small place. And for that to get back to my family and my parents, I didn't want that to happen,
Yeah, sorry, please.
I was going to say, one thing that really put the nail in that coffin is that I got arrested once with a couple of other people um, who had drugs. So nobody admitted to who had these drugs. So then they went and searched every one of our houses, and I was living with my parents. And they went back to my parents' place and woke them up with me handcuffed to this cop who was very tall. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was just disgraced by myself, with myself. I was just in full disgrace. Like, just I can remember how my father is looking at me right now. I can remember that, and I thought, that's it. I've got to change my ways.
Now you have what? How many gyms do you have now?
10 here now.
10. And then this online thing. How did like this mega growth happen for you?
Okay, so a lot happened between then. In Australia, I moved to the US for a little while. Uh, I was working there then for like the largest uh, health and fitness platform in the world back then, bodybuilding.com. I was the editor in chief. And I wrote a book in collaboration with bodybuilding.com. And this was published by Simon and Schuster. And I had to do book launches, and one of them was here in India at Mumbai. And that book ended up in hands of Riddick Roshan, and he was like, I need this guy to train me. I agreed to train him, and I was here for a little while, obviously traveling a lot around India.
By chance, Ritik picked up the book. And then he said, I want to see this guy. You didn't know who Ritik Roshan was.
Yeah, I was in a supermarket at the time in the UK, and my manager and friend Jag Chima called me up and said, "This guy Riddick Roshan, he wants to talk to you." I'm like, who's this guy?
Yeah.
Jag knew who he was, and then had a consultation with Riddick. I knew he was serious. I could see from the look in his eye how badly he wanted it. And then during the time of me being in India, I recognized that there was a need of, I call them educational academies, but gyms here to help personal trainers and obviously help the community live a healthier lifestyle.
What are you seeking, Chris?
Seeking happiness, being grateful, being present, in this community, this conversation I'm having with you right now, appreciating this, as opposed to thinking, okay, what have I got going on next, tomorrow, next month, next year, and living a little bit more present because I've always thought about the future too much and then worried and stressed about the past. And I think, going on a Vipassana, for instance, has really helped with that.
What was that? You were quiet for 10 days? You don't talk?
No talk, no talking, no eye contact, no reading, no writing.
Like your brain reacts, like your especially the first few days, your brain rebels.
The first, like, it's a very emotional experience for the first 4 or 5 days, crying, because
You're crying alone.
yeah, because there's a form of, I think we're always trying to avert from something, or we're craving something, and when you're there, you're craving to get back out, and you're averting being there. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. What have I thought about? Why have I done this? But you recognize, okay, this is exactly what I'm supposed to do because I'm supposed to be in a state of equanimity, but instead I'm in aversion and in crave. So you have to really stick it out, and it's difficult. But the thing is, you speak to other people, and they all say it's coming. They all say the same thing, so you know to expect it. But it doesn't make it much easier. But it's the most rewarding thing one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. Like, I've tried plant medicine. I've traveled to Costa Rica to do ayahuasca, and I've gone into a clinical setting and done ketamine, and I never really found the answer of what I was trying to look for until I did something that didn't require any mind altering drug. It was just being alone and hearing my thoughts and allowing my thoughts to surface so I could just observe instead of judge, and that was very, very powerful. But you have to keep it up. Fortunately, in a place like India, it's a little bit easier to continue because you have that more spiritual connection, I think, where you do still have to meditate in the morning and at night. So I think it's very important.
You're very okay with being vulnerable, sharing your weaknesses, even though you've come from the fitness point of view, and you're right now giving me an interview, but you're very open about your own shortcomings or whatever weaknesses or things you've had to overcome. Despite you presenting this brand that, hey, I'm going to transform you, I'm going to get you sorted, you don't believe in presenting this perfect image of yours.
Well, I guess it's too late now if I was.
No, but that's really good. It's refreshing, it's authentic, it's real, and I think that's what made you take. Before you go, one question I want to ask: a lot of young boys and girls are phone addicted,
Yeah, no, no shit.
and they're not doing the work. And they say, "I don't have time to go to the gym. I don't have time. Can't you see? I'm so busy." And it's then you check their screen time, and yeah, 3 hours a day Instagram. So, what do you have to say to them? How do they get rid of that addiction?
Well, luckily, like, I went down this biohacking rabbit hole several years ago, 2014 to be exact, and I looked at all the harmful effects of different things that could affect me because of this, like mold toxicity. But I realized, and this is a weird way how I came across it, I found that I had like a sensitivity to like too much electricity and EMF overload. So I went to a music festival in Las Vegas, outside of Las Vegas at the Speedway there. And even though I wasn't drinking, I wasn't doing drugs, I just felt like I had a massive hangover for several days. And a few people that was within our party said the same thing. And I thought to myself, because no one's phone was working at the Speedway because there was so many people there in this arena that our phones just stopped working. There was just so much EMF. And then where we staying in a hotel with his Wi-Fi, and we're in Las Vegas. And that's what made me really look into that. And I started speaking to a lot of doctors and professors and people who had a lot of knowledge when it came to earthing and grounding. And that's when I realized, okay, maybe there's an electrosensitivity thing. Because we don't see it, we don't believe it. Much like, the tobacco industry in the 60s. It's cool, it's okay, not knowing the damaging effects of it until much later. So that's when I really started going down that rabbit hole and doing whatever I could to protect myself. So this fanny pack that I've got here, you may think, oh, he's a bodybuilder, he's got whatever in there. This is a case that actually closes off all EMFs from my phone. So I have an EMF, like a Defender Shield case as well, that blocks out all EMFs from penetrating me. Um, we've had like a building biologist come to our house to check where the dirty electricity is. So I've realized that in doing all these little things, I've felt so much better. Not only am I protecting myself from that, but I'm more conscious about this device. I know that it gives me a dopamine fix when I look at the artificial blue light that penetrates my retina. And I get the dopamine fix when I'm scrolling as well, or going on to Amazon, or seeing if I've got a like or something like that. So I recognize that, and that's a damaging effect. So I realize, and this is what I ask myself all the time, and I want your listeners to ask themselves as well, what is my future self going to say? Is it going to say you should have spent more time on that phone looking at aimless crap? Basically, we're watching a reality show. That's all we're doing.
Love Island.
Love Island on the phone 24/7, but we've got so many other channels. We can watch TV, YouTube, watch this channel. We can go onto other people's socials. We can do Uber Eats, whatever it may be. It's drug, 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 drug that lights up the bliss point in our brain that creates this addiction. And now we've become a slave. We're supposed to use this. It's not supposed to use us, but it's using people, and they're allowing that to happen. Is it difficult? It's just like any drug, of course. But start off with maybe putting your phone on airplane mode. If there's an app that you're on all the time, let's say it's Instagram, sign out of it. It's another step for you to have to sign in and put in your password that may prevent you from just going, oh no, I have to sign in. Okay, I'll do it after. It's just little simple baby steps.
How was this experience for you?
Phenomenal. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Very different to a lot of interviews that I've done. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I promised you that this will be different. This is deep talk. We go deep. We are interested in the person, and I think I firmly believe as a storyteller that everyone has a great story in them, and especially when it's someone like you who's achieved a lot in a very unconventional way, there is a lot to learn just from that story, and hopefully you learned a little bit about yourself too from it.
I think the more that you hear about these things, you kind of reflect and adjust accordingly.
And guys, those who've been watching, you know what you have to do. The best way to support the channel is to like, subscribe, share, send it to your aunt, send it to all your WhatsApp groups, but also comment. And I promise you that Kris is going to read them.
I will.
He will read all the comments, good or bad, whether you agreed with him, whether you didn't agree with him. Fitness is and food is a very controversial topic. People like take positions like they take political positions, like no, this good, that good. So please, all that is for Kris to enjoy. But I think he was really positive and amazing. And you will find on my channel, people are really only coming here to learn. So you'll get only positive comments. Please do comment. It will help my channel's engagement for sure. But Kris would really love it. Kris, you gave us enormous information, enormous useful information, which people will just not find or not find all in one place. And thank you so much for opening about your life and your weaknesses. Because and why I bring those out is because people feel, oh, people like Kris and Hrithik are different. But now you said that no, even Hrithik has a weakness for sweets. And
He
it's
has a
not,
lot of weaknesses, a lot
yeah,
of weaknesses, and he recognizes them, and that's the most important thing. You recognize them.
recognize. So if you guys think that, oh, I'm weak and these guys are superheroes, Avengers, oh, it's not true. It's just Alim's done that hairstyle and he looks like X-Men. But I really feel we are all human beings and we all have our own struggles, but we can all get better. We can all improve. We can get better. And that's what life should be about.
It's a constant work in progress.
Constant work in process till get till the end of your day. So, guys, that was Kris Gethin. Hope you enjoyed the show. This was Deep Talk. Thank you for watching. Take care.